There are organizations that control the global economy, and you've never heard of them. They're not governments, not corporations, not banks. They're think tanks. Small groups of economists, policy experts, and business leaders meeting behind closed doors, writing reports most people never read, recommending policies that change millions of lives. And what's disturbing? They refunded by the people who benefit most from their recommendations. Billionaires, corporations, industries that profit when their preferred policies become law. This is the story of how a handful of think tanks rewrote the rules of capitalism, how they convinced governments worldwide to deregulate, privatize, and cut taxes for the rich, how their ideas created the greatest wealth transfer in history, the Mont Pelerin Society, the Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, the Atlas Network. Names you've probably never heard, but they've shaped your world more than any election. They proved something terrifying. You don't need to win elections to control policy. You just need to control the ideas. And with enough money, you can make any idea seem inevitable. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn will change how you see economic policy, political debates, and who really runs the world. Switzerland, Mount Pelerin. 36 economists gather at a resort. They're worried. World War II just ended. Governments everywhere are expanding, creating welfare states, regulating markets, taxing the wealthy. To these economists, this is catastrophe. They believe free markets are sacred. Government intervention is evil. Regulation destroys prosperity. But they're losing. Everywhere they look, countries are moving toward government-managed economies. The New Deal in America, the NHS in Britain, social democracy in Europe. Free market capitalism is dying, and they need to save it. The leader of this group is Friedrich Hayek, Austrian economist, author of The Road to Serfdom. His argument: any government intervention eventually leads to totalitarianism. Hayek has a plan. He says, we can't win the political battle right now, but we can win the intellectual battle. We need to change how people think about economics over the next generation. This is the founding of the Mont Pelerin Society, and it's the birth of the modern think tank model. Here's their strategy. Step 1. Create intellectual legitimacy. Publish academic papers. Host conferences. Make free market economics seem scholarly and respectable. Step 2. Build a network. Connect economists, journalists, politicians, and business leaders who share their ideology. Step 3. Fund everything. Get money from wealthy donors who benefit from free market policies. Step 4. Play the long game. Spend decades building influence. Wait for the right crisis to implement policies. And it works brilliantly. By 1960, Mont Pelerin has members in 20 countries. They're publishing books, teaching at universities, advising politicians, but they're still fringe. The mainstream still believes in regulated capitalism, welfare states, progressive taxation. Then comes the 1970s, and everything changes. Stagflation hits, high inflation plus high unemployment. This shouldn't happen according to Keynesian economics. The prevailing theory says you get either inflation or unemployment, not both. The mainstream economists are confused. They have no solution. But the Mont Pelerin economists do. They say, the problem is too much government, too much regulation, too much taxation. The solution: deregulate everything, cut taxes, shrink government, free the markets. And suddenly, politicians are listening. Because the old solutions aren't working. They need new ideas. Margaret Thatcher becomes UK Prime Minister. She's heavily influenced by Hayek. She implements Mont Pelerin policies. Privatize state ministries, break unions, cut taxes, deregulate finance. Ronald Reagan becomes US president. Same ideology, same policies. Deregulation, tax cuts for the rich, union bust. The Mont Pelerin Society has won. Their ideas are now government policy in the world's major economies. But this is just the beginning, because the success of these policies makes the donors very rich. And now they have money to fund even more think tanks. The think tank industry explodes. The Heritage Foundation is founded in Washington, D.C. Their pitch to donors: we'll create research that supports pro-business policies. We'll package it to look objective. We'll get it to politicians before they vote. Their innovation: speed. Traditional think tanks take months to publish research. Heritage promises 24 to 48-hour turnaround. A bill is proposed. Heritage produces a report within days saying why it's bad if it helps workers, or good if it helps business. Politicians get research immediately, and it works. Heritage becomes incredibly influential. Every Republican politician cites Heritage Research. Their policy proposals become Republican platform. By 2000, Heritage has a $70 million annual budget, all from conservative donors, all pushing the same message: less regulation, lower taxes, smaller government. But Heritage is just one of many. The model spreads. 1974, American Enterprise Institute (AEI) expands massively, funded by major corporations, produces pro-business research on every policy issue. 1977, Cato Institute, founded by Charles Koch, explicitly libertarian, opposes all regulation, all taxation, all government intervention. 1981, Manhattan Institute, founded, focuses on urban policy, argues against welfare, public housing, and government services. These think tanks create an infrastructure of ideas. Here's how it works. The pipeline. Wealthy donors fund the think tank corporations. Billionaires. Industry groups think tank hires economists and policy experts who agree with donor interests. Researchers produce papers supporting donor-friendly policies, cutting their taxes, removing their regulations, privatizing their competition. Think tank publicizes research through press releases, op-eds, media appearances. Politicians cite research as independent expert opinion. Policies are passed, donors profit enormously. Cycle repeats with more funding. This isn't conspiracy, it's documented. The funding sources are public. The connections are obvious. But it works because it's packaged as independent research. And here's the key. These think tanks coordinate. They're not competing, they're collaborating. The Atlas Network, founded in 1981, exists specifically to coordinate free market think tanks globally. They now have 500 partner organizations in 100 countries. Atlas provides seed funding for new think tanks, training for think tank staff, model legislation that can be copied, media strategies that work, connections to donors. They're franchising the think tank model globally, creating a worldwide network, all pushing the same policies: privatization, deregulation, tax cuts. And the results are massive. Since 1980, almost every country has cut taxes on the wealthy, deregulated finance, privatized state industries, weakened labor unions, reduced social spending. This isn't coincidence. This isn't natural evolution. This is coordinated policy advocacy, funded by the people who benefit most. But the really clever part, they make it seem inevitable. Here's how think tanks make radical policies seem inevitable. Step 1. Overton window shift. The Overton window is the range of policies considered acceptable in public discourse. Think tanks deliberately push extreme positions to shift this window. Example: want to privatize Social Security? Don't start there. First, fund research saying Social Security is going bankrupt, even if false. Then propose small cuts. Then larger cuts. Then partial privatization. Then full privatization. Each step makes the next seem reasonable. Within 20 years, policies that were unthinkable become mainstream. Step 2. Manufacture crisis. Think tanks excel at creating panic about problems that benefit their donors. Budget deficit. They scream about it when Democrats spend on social programs. Silent when Republicans cut taxes for the rich. Inflation. Blame government spending, not corporate price gouging or supply chain issues. Economic slowdown. Blame regulation, not lack of consumer demand. They control the narrative about what's wrong, so their solutions seem obvious. Step 3. Academic capture. Think tanks fund university programs, endow professorships, sponsor research. George Mason University's economics department is heavily funded by Koch brothers. The research produced there overwhelmingly supports Koch political preferences. University of Chicago economics department, funded by business interests for decades, becomes the center of free market fundamentalism. These aren't bribes, they're investments. Fund the professors who produce the research you want. Those professors train the next generation. The ideology becomes self-perpetuating. Step 4. Media domination. Think tank fellows appear on news shows as independent experts, but they're paid by organizations funded by corporations and billionaires. You watch a debate about tax policy. One person says, raise taxes on the rich. The other, from Heritage Foundation or Cato Institute, says that would hurt the economy. The debate seems balanced. Two expert opinions, but one expert is paid by the people who don't want their taxes raised. Step 5. Revolving door. Think tank fellows become government officials. Government officials retire to think tanks. The line between advocacy and policy making disappears. Example: Mike Pence went from Heritage Foundation to vice president. Paul Ryan was a Heritage Fellow. Dozens of Trump administration officials came from think tanks. They go into government with ready-made policies written by their former think tank colleagues. The policies become law. But here's what's crucial. This system has created the greatest wealth transfer in history. Since 1980, top 1% wealth share doubled. CEO pay increased 1,000%, plus worker wages stagnated, inequality reached record levels. This isn't accident. This is the result of 40 years of think tank designed policy. Every tax cut they advocated for, passed. Every deregulation they recommended, implemented. Every privatization they suggested, completed. And every single one made the wealthy wealthier, while making everyone else relatively poorer. The think tanks succeeded at their mission: reshape capitalism to benefit the rich. But now, the model is being challenged. Financial crisis. The system nearly collapses. For 30 years, think tanks said, deregulate finance. Markets self-regulate. Government intervention causes problems. Then the deregulated financial system imploded, required massive government bailouts, nearly destroyed the global economy. This should have discredited the think tanks, should have exposed their ideology as dangerous. But something remarkable happens. They doubled down. Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute, AEI, all blame the crisis on too much regulation, not enough free market. They say the problem was government-backed mortgages, affordable housing requirements, the Fed keeping interest rates low, not deregulation, not predatory lending, not fraudulent securities, not the lack of oversight they'd advocated for decades. And incredibly, this narrative gains traction, because think tanks have spent 30 years building infrastructure to spread their message. By 2010, the narrative has shifted from deregulation caused crisis to government caused crisis. Tea Party movement adopts this. Republicans embrace it, and policy moves even further toward free markets. More tax cuts, more deregulation, more privatization. The think tanks have become immune to failure. Their policies fail, and they blame government, then use the failure to advocate for more of the same policies. But they're facing a new challenge: progressive think tanks. For decades, progressive policy organizations were tiny and underfunded. They couldn't compete with Herod's Cato and AEI. But after 2008, progressive donors start investing in infrastructure. New think tanks emerge. Roosevelt Institute focuses on economic democracy and structural reform. Economic Policy Institute, labor-focused research on wages and working conditions. Institute for New Economic Thinking, challenges mainstream economics orthodoxy. Data for Progress, polling and research supporting progressive policies. These organizations are smaller and less funded than conservative think tanks, but they're growing, and they're changing the discourse. Suddenly, ideas that were considered radical are mainstream. Medicare for all, Green New Deal wealth taxes, breaking up tech monopolies, universal basic income. The Overton window is shifting, not because voters suddenly became more left-wing, but because think tanks are pushing the window left. Conservative think tanks recognize the threat. They're funding counter-campaigns, producing research attacking progressive policies. We're watching a battle of ideas, funded by competing sets of billionaires, playing out through think tank research and media campaigns. But here's what's disturbing. Both sides are using the same model. Rich people fund organizations to produce research supporting their interests. Research is packaged as objective expertise. Politicians cite it. Policies are passed. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. Policy is for sale to the highest bidder. Step 4. Media domination. Think tank fellows appear on news shows as independent experts, but they're paid by organizations funded by corporations and billionaires. You watch a debate about tax policy. One person says, raise taxes on the rich. The other, from Heritage Foundation or Cato Institute, says that would hurt the economy. The debate seems balanced. Two expert opinions, but one expert is paid by the people who don't want their taxes raised. Step 5. Revolving door think tank fellows become government officials. Government officials retired to think tanks. The line between advocacy and policy making disappears. Example: Mike Pence went from Heritage Foundation to vice president. Paul Ryan was a Heritage Fellow. Dozens of Trump administration officials came from think tanks. They go into government with ready-made policies written by their former think tank colleagues. The policies become law. But here's what's crucial. This system has created the greatest wealth transfer in history. Since 1980, top 1% wealth share doubled. CEO pay increased 1,000%, plus worker wages stagnated, inequality reached record levels. This isn't accident. This is the result of 40 years of think tank designed policy. Every tax cut they advocated for, passed. Every deregulation they recommended, implemented. Every privatization they suggested, completed. And every single one made the wealthy wealthier, while making everyone else relatively poorer. The think tanks succeeded at their mission: reshape capitalism to benefit the rich. But now, the model is being challenged. Financial crisis. The system nearly collapses. For 30 years, think tanks said, deregulate finance. Markets self-regulate. Government intervention causes problems. Then the deregulated financial system imploded, required massive government bailouts, nearly destroyed the global economy. This should have discredited the think tanks, should have exposed their ideology as dangerous. But something remarkable happens. They doubled down. Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute, AEI, all blame the crisis on too much regulation, not enough free market. They say the problem was government-backed mortgages, affordable housing requirements, the Fed keeping interest rates low, not deregulation, not predatory lending, not fraudulent securities, not the lack of oversight they'd advocated for decades. And incredibly, this narrative gains traction, because think tanks have spent 30 years building infrastructure to spread their message. By 2010, the narrative has shifted from deregulation caused crisis to government caused crisis. Tea Party movement adopts this. Republicans embrace it, and policy moves even further toward free markets. More tax cuts, more deregulation, more privatization. The think tanks have become immune to failure. Their policies fail, and they blame government, then use the failure to advocate for more of the same policies. But they're facing a new challenge: progressive think tanks. For decades, progressive policy organizations were tiny and underfunded. They couldn't compete with Herod's Cato and AEI. But after 2008, progressive donors start investing in infrastructure. New think tanks emerge. Roosevelt Institute focuses on economic democracy and structural reform. Economic Policy Institute, labor-focused research on wages and working conditions. Institute for New Economic Thinking, challenges mainstream economics orthodoxy. Data for Progress, polling and research supporting progressive policies. These organizations are smaller and less funded than conservative think tanks, but they're growing, and they're changing the discourse. Suddenly, ideas that were considered radical are mainstream: Medicare for all, Green New Deal wealth taxes, breaking up tech monopolies, universal basic income. The Overton window is shifting, not because voters suddenly became more left-wing, but because think tanks are pushing the window left. Conservative think tanks recognize the threat. They're funding counter-campaigns, producing research attacking progressive policies. We're watching a battle of ideas, funded by competing sets of billionaires, playing out through think tank research and media campaigns. But here's what's disturbing. Both sides are using the same model. Rich people fund organizations to produce research supporting their interests. Research is packaged as objective expertise. Politicians cite it. Policies are passed. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. Policy is for sale to the highest bidder. Think about the last time you heard an economic policy debate. Someone says, studies show that tax cuts stimulate economic growth. Where did that study come from? Probably a think tank funded by people who benefit from tax cuts. Someone else says, research proves raising minimum wage kills jobs. Where's that research from? Probably a think tank funded by businesses that don't want to pay higher wages. We're told these are objective facts, independent research, expert consensus, but their advocacy, paid for by interested parties, disguised as science. And this extends to everything. Climate policy debates. Think tanks, funded by fossil fuel companies, say climate change isn't urgent. Healthcare policy. Think tanks funded by insurance companies oppose universal healthcare. Tech regulation. Think tanks funded by tech companies oppose antitrust enforcement. Financial regulation. Think tanks funded by banks oppose oversight. Every policy debate is influenced by think tank research. And almost every think tank is funded by people with financial stakes in the outcome. This is how the global economy is actually governed. Not by voters, not by elected officials, by a network of donor-funded organizations producing research that serves donor interests. And the donors are winning. Spectacularly. Global tax rates on corporations and wealthy individuals, down significantly since 1980. Financial regulations, weakened dramatically since 1980. Labor protections eroded significantly since 1980. Social spending, as share of GDP in most countries, stagnant or declining since 1980. Every trend benefits the wealthy. Every trend hurts workers. And every trend was advocated for by think tanks funded by the wealthy. This isn't conspiracy. It's industrial-scale policy capture. Out in the open. Legal. Accepted. The think tank model proved you can buy policy without buying politicians directly. You buy the ideas. Fund the research. Control the discourse. Politicians will cite your research because it seems authoritative. Media will cover your findings because you have good PR. And policies will change because the intellectual environment has been shaped. The Mont Pelerin Society figured this out in 1975 years later. Their model has reshaped the global economy. But here's the question. Now that you know, does it change anything? Because the system depends on invisibility. On people not knowing that independent research is funded by interested parties. On policy debates, seeming objective when they're actually advocacy. The think tanks have power because they operate in the background. They're not elected. They're not accountable. They're not even visible to most people. But they're more powerful than most governments. Because they shape what governments think is possible. So here's what think tanks really teach us. Policy isn't made by voters. It's made by whoever can afford to fund the ideas. For 75 years, a network of think tanks has reshaped the global economy. They've convinced governments worldwide to cut taxes on the wealthy, deregulate corporations, privatize public services, and weaken workers. And they succeeded because they understood something crucial. You don't need to control politicians. If you control the ideas politicians think are legitimate. The Mont Pelerin Society started with 36 economists meeting in Switzerland. Today, their ideological descendants control a multi-billion-dollar global network of think tanks influencing policy in 100+ countries. They proved that with enough money and patience, you can make any idea seem inevitable, can shift the Overton window to make radical policies appear moderate, can reshape entire economies to benefit your donors. This is the real power structure of modern capitalism. Not conspiracy, just well-funded advocacy disguised as expertise. And the model works so well that both sides now use it. Conservative billionaires fund conservative think tanks. Progressive billionaires fund progressive think tanks. Policy becomes a bidding war between competing sets of wealthy people. Democracy is supposed to mean rule by the people. But when policy is determined by think tank research funded by billionaires, who's really in charge? The answer is obvious and disturbing. Every economic debate you watch is theater. The real debate already happened behind closed doors at think tank meetings, funded by people with financial stakes in the outcome. Every expert you see on TV works for an organization funded by interested parties. Their research isn't objective. It's advocacy with footnotes. Every policy that seems inevitable was made to seem that way by decades of think tank work, shifting the Overton window. We're living in a think tank-designed world. Every major economic policy of the last 40 years was developed, advocated for, and legitimized by this network. And unless you know they exist, you'll keep thinking policy debates are about facts and evidence, when they're really about which billionaires funded better research. What do you think? Can democracy function when policy is for sale to think tank donors? Is there a way to have independent expertise that isn't captured by money? Drop your thoughts in comments. Because 75 years ago, a group of economists realized they couldn't win elections. So they decided to win the intellectual war instead. They built think tanks, funded research, shaped discourse, changed what ideas seemed possible. And they won, completely. The global economy today is built on their ideas, implemented through their policies, serving their donors' interests. You've never heard of most of these organizations, but they've shaped your world more than any election. This is how power actually works. Not through votes, through ideas, and ideas can be bought. Welcome to the think tank economy, where policy is a product, expertise is advertising, and democracy is just another market. The people who funded the research are winning. Everyone else is living with the consequences. And the system continues because most people don't even know it exists. Now you do. The question is, does knowing change anything? Or are we all just living in someone else's think tank?